The royal hall was brighter than usual that morning. But no one felt comfort in the light. Golden lamps glowed along the tall walls. Long silver banners hung from the ceiling. Soft music played from hidden speakers behind carved stone pillars. Everything in the palace looked calm, rich, and perfect. But in the center of the hall, nothing was calm. The little princess was crying again. Her small face was red. Tears rolled down her cheeks without stopping. Her tiny hands pushed away every person who came near her. One royal nurse bent down with a gentle smile and opened her arms. The princess turned her face and cried even louder. Another nurse brought her favorite glowing toy bird. The child did not even look at it. A palace servant offered sweet fruit from a crystal tray. The princess slapped the tray away. The fruit rolled across the polished floor. The sound made everyone freeze. Near the throne, the queen stood still, but her heart was far from calm. She had ruled star systems, ended trade wars, and faced enemy fleets without fear. Yet at that moment, she felt helpless. She looked at her daughter, and pain filled her eyes. The little princess had not been like this before. She was usually warm, curious, and full of light. She laughed easily. She loved music, flowers, and the small flying lights in the palace gardens. But for the last few days, something had changed. She had become quiet at first, then restless, then fearful. Now she refused everyone, even her own mother. The queen slowly stepped down from the throne platform. Her long, dark robe moved softly across the floor. The whole hall became silent as she walked toward the child. "My little star," she said in a soft voice, "come to me." The princess looked up. For one brief second, the queen hoped. But the child's lower lip shook. She stepped back. Then she began crying harder than before. The queen stopped where she was. It felt like an invisible wall stood between them. Behind her, the royal advisors exchanged worried looks. The chief nurse lowered her head in shame. Two guards near the eastern doors shifted uneasily but stayed in place. No one knew what to do. One of the older advisors stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, perhaps the child is tired. The royal healer should examine her again." The queen did not answer at once. The healer had already come twice. He had found no sickness, no fever, no poison, no clear reason for this sudden fear. Still, the princess kept acting as if danger was near. Another servant tried to move closer, very slowly. Hoping not to frighten her, the princess let out a sharp cry and ran away from him. Small footsteps echoed across the giant hall. She ran past the nurses, past the servants, past the queen, and then she stopped at the far end of the royal hall, near the great entrance doors. A human soldier stood quietly beside two palace guards. He was not dressed like the royal soldiers of the empire. His uniform was plain, dark, and practical. No jewels, no bright colors, no family crest. Only simple armor, clean boots, and the calm face of a man used to standing watch for long hours. He was a guest soldier from Earth. His name was not important in the palace. He had arrived only 3 days ago as part of a small military exchange group. He was there to observe, learn, and offer respect between human forces and the Queen's empire. That was all. No one had paid much attention to him until now. The little princess stared at him. Through wet eyes, the human soldier did not move. He seemed surprised, but he stayed still. He did not smile too quickly. He did not step forward. He did not speak. He only looked at the child with quiet care, as if he understood that one wrong move might scare her again. The entire hall watched the princess sniffed, wiped one eye with her small hand, and took a step toward him. The queen's breath caught another step, then another. No one dared speak. Even the music seemed too loud now. Though it was barely a whisper, the child walked past the shining floor designs, past the great blue pillar of the western side, and stopped only a few feet away from the human soldier. One palace guard glanced at the other, in confusion. The human still did not move. The princess looked up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand, not toward the queen, not toward her nurses, toward the human soldier. A wave of shock moved through the room. Like cold air, the queen could hardly believe what she was seeing. The soldier looked toward the throne for permission. He was careful, respectful, silent. The queen gave no order she could not. She was too stunned, very gently. The human lowered himself to one knee so he would not tower over the child. His movements were slow and steady. The little princess studied his face for a moment, as if searching for something only she could see. Then she placed her tiny hand on his arm, and just like that, the crying stopped, not slowly, not a little, completely. The hall fell into a silence so deep it felt unreal. The princess stood beside the human soldier, breathing softly now, her tears still shining on her cheeks. But the fear was fading from her face. She looked calmer, safer, as if she had finally found the one person she had been searching for all along. The queen stared at them, unable to speak. Around her, nobles, servants, nurses, and guards all shared the same silent question: why him? Why would the little princess, who had rejected everyone in the palace, choose a human soldier she had never truly known? The queen felt a strange chill move through her. Something had changed in her hall that day. Something no title, no rank, and no power could explain. And deep in her heart, she knew this was only the beginning. The queen did not move for several long seconds. The sight before her felt impossible. Her little daughter, who had refused every hand in the palace, was now standing quietly beside the human soldier, as if she belonged there. The child's tiny fingers rested on the dark cloth of his sleeve. Her breathing had become soft and even. The tears were still on her face, but the fear that had filled her eyes only moments ago was almost gone. No one in the hall understood what they were seeing. The chief nurse was the first to speak. "Your Majesty," she said carefully, "perhaps the child is only curious," but her voice did not sound confident. The queen kept her eyes on the princess. "Curious children do not calm this fast," she said. The nurse lowered her head. The human soldier remained on one knee. He kept his hands where the court could see them. He did not reach for the child, did not try to speak to her. He simply stayed still, calm, and patient. That silence made the moment even stranger. One of the royal advisors stepped closer to the queen. He was old, sharp-faced, and never comfortable around outsiders. "This is not natural," he whispered. "The child has refused her own blood, yet she stands at peace beside a foreign guard. We should separate them now." The queen did not answer at once. She wanted to agree. She wanted to take her daughter back into her arms and end the strange scene in front of the whole court. But something held her still. Maybe it was the look on the princess's face. For the first time in days, the child did not look frightened. That mattered more than royal pride. The queen slowly stepped forward. At once, the little princess turned her head. Fear returned to her eyes. Her hand gripped the soldier's sleeve more tightly. The queen stopped. The pain of that small reaction struck deeper than any insult from enemy kings or rival empires. She had faced war without shaking. Yet her daughter stepping away from her was harder to bear than any battlefield. "My little star," the queen said, forcing warmth into her voice. "It is only me." But the child pressed closer to the human. Soldiers sighed. A low murmur moved through the hall. The nobles did not hide their shock now. Some looked offended. Some looked suspicious. Others stared at the human as if he had done something secret and dangerous. The soldier finally spoke, his voice low and respectful. "Your Majesty, I have done nothing." His words were simple. Honest, the Queen studied him carefully. He did not look proud. He did not look excited by the attention. If anything, he seemed uncomfortable being the center of the room. "What is your name?" the Queen asked. "Daniel Mercer, Your Majesty." His Earth name sounded plain in the grand royal hall. The Queen repeated it once in her mind. Daniel Mercer, a simple human soldier, not a prince, not a famous commander. Just a man standing in a place far above his rank. Yet somehow, her daughter trusted him. The little princess looked up at him and gave a soft sound, almost like a tired sigh. Then, to the surprise of everyone, she leaned against his arm as if she had known him for years. The Queen's eyes narrowed. This was no small thing now. This was no passing moment. She turned to the room. "Clear the hall." The order hit the nobles like cold water. "Your Majesty," one protested. Now, the Queen said, no one argued again. Servants bowed and hurried away. The musicians left. First, carrying their instruments in silence. Nurses backed away with worried eyes. Advisors moved reluctantly toward the doors, still glancing over their shoulders. Even the royal guards shifted to the outer walls, leaving a wide open space around the Queen, the child, and the human soldier. Within moments, the great hall felt far larger and much more empty. Only a few trusted guards remained near the doors. The Queen took another slow step forward, careful not to move too fast. The princess watched her, but this time she did not cry. She only stayed close to Daniel, her hand still resting on him. "Stand," the Queen said to the soldier. He rose carefully, not wanting to pull away from the child too quickly. The little princess looked up at him at once, as if checking that he would not leave. When he stayed, she relaxed again. The Queen saw every detail. That night, the royal palace did not sleep. The lights in the high towers remained on long after midnight. Silent guards stood under silver arches. Servants moved through the halls in careful steps, speaking in whispers. The air itself felt tense, as if the palace was waiting for something it could not yet name. Inside her private chamber, the Queen stood before a wide star-glass window and looked down at the city below. Thousands of lights filled the dark horizon. Her empire still looked strong, still looked peaceful, but her thoughts were not on the city. They were on the human soldier, and on her daughter. The little princess was finally asleep in the room beside hers. For the first time in many days, the child had rested without fear. But she had agreed to sleep only after Daniel Mercer had remained outside the chamber door for nearly an hour. That detail troubled the Queen more than she wanted to admit. A soft sound came from behind her. The chamber doors opened, and her chief intelligence officer entered with a data slate in his hand. He was a thin man, with sharp eyes and a calm face. He bowed low. "Your Majesty, the report is ready." The Queen turned at once. "Then speak." He stepped forward and placed the glowing slate on the table between them. "We searched every file available through palace records, military exchange logs, and Earth command channels. Daniel Mercer appears to be exactly what he claims." The Queen crossed her arms. "A simple soldier." "Yes, Your Majesty." She did not like that answer. The officer touched the slate, and lines of information appeared in the air above it. A human face rotated slowly in blue light. Daniel Mercer. Age, service number, unit history. Mission reports. The Queen studied the image in silence. "Continue," she said. "He served in rescue operations near the Outer Belt colonies," the officer said. Later, he joined civilian protection missions in unstable sectors. His record shows discipline, steady judgment, and high survival success during emergencies. The Queen's eyes moved over the floating data. Any signs of disloyalty? Hidden ties? Political groups? Intelligence work? None. Criminal record? None. Psychological concerns? The officer paused. Only one repeated. Note, Your Majesty. The Queen looked up, which is, a T, changed the display. Several mission reports appeared side by side. One line had been marked again and again in different files. Children responded well to his presence. The Queen's expression hardened. Explain. The officer gave a small nod. During a station fire on Varney's outpost, he carried 2 injured children out before rescue teams reached the area. During a pirate raid in the Helix Lanes, one civilian child refused treatment from medics until Mercer remained nearby. On another mission, displaced families described him as unusually calming in crisis situations. The Queen said nothing for a moment. Then she spoke very quietly. So this has happened before. In smaller ways, yes. That answer settled heavily in the room. The Queen walked around the table and looked again at the glowing image of the human soldier. Nothing about him seemed special. No noble blood. No wealth, no title, no known influence. His face was plain. His record was clean. To clean. Almost, and yet her daughter had chosen him without hesitation. Not because she was told to. Not because she knew his name. She had simply seen him and trusted him. The Queen did not enjoy mysteries she could not control. Leave the report, she said. The officer bowed. There is one more thing. She looked at him sharply. We reviewed the princess's behavior during the last 6 days. The pattern is unusual. Her fear did not begin at random. It increased in specific places. The Queen stepped closer. What places? The Eastern Nursery, the old garden corridor, the lower music hall, and twice near the public throne chamber. The Queen's face changed. Those were all formal areas of the palace. All places with heavy traffic, old architecture, and many points of access. Are you suggesting a threat? She asked. I am suggesting caution, Your Majesty. The room became very still. The Queen looked back at the sleeping chamber door. Her daughter was too young to explain strange feelings, too young to understand danger in words. But children often reacted before adults noticed what was wrong. A sound, a scent, a face, a pattern in the air. Something real, even if unseen. Had the child sensed danger before anyone else? And if she had, why had she felt safe only near the human? The Queen dismissed the officer and stood alone once more. For several minutes she remained at the window, thinking. Then, without calling servants or guards, she left her chamber. The private halls were quiet as she moved through them. Her long dark robe brushed softly against the polished floor. She passed 2 night guards, and both bowed low. But she did not stop. At the end of the east corridor was a small garden room used for private rest. Moonlight from the upper glass dome fell across pale flowers and still water. The Queen had been told the human soldier was there. She approached in silence and stopped just outside the half-open door. Inside, Daniel Mercer sat in a simple chair near the wall. He was still in uniform, though the upper plates had been removed. His hands rested loosely on his knees. He looked tired, but alert. Beside him, curled on a low cushion, the little princess slept peacefully. One of her tiny hands held the edge of his sleeve. The Queen did not step inside. She only watched. There was no trick in his face. No hidden hunger for power. No false sweetness. He was not speaking, not moving, not trying to impress anyone. He simply sat there in silence, letting the child rest. The scene should have eased the Queen's mind. Instead, it made the mystery deeper because, for the first time, she felt a thought enter her heart that she did not want to accept. Maybe her daughter had seen something true before everyone else. Maybe in a palace full of titles, training, and pride, the safest person in the room had really been the human soldier. And if that was true, then the danger inside her palace was far greater than anyone had imagined. By the next morning, the whole palace was full of whispers. News moved fast through royal halls, even when no one spoke loudly. Servants shared looks in the kitchens. Guards spoke in low voices near the training court. Noble guests pretended not to gossip, but their eyes and small smiles said enough. Everyone knew the same strange thing. The little princess wanted the human soldier near her, and no one knew why. The queen had hoped the bond would fade after one night of rest. She told herself the child had only been tired, frightened, and confused. Morning would come, the princess would wake, and normal life would return. But morning proved the opposite. When the chief nurse entered the princess's chamber, the child grew tense at once. When two royal attendants came forward with breakfast, she pushed the tray away. When the queen herself tried to lift her into her arms, the little girl looked past her mother's shoulder toward the open doorway. She was searching for someone. The queen knew who. A moment later, Daniel Mercer appeared at the door, standing. Only because the queen had ordered him to remain nearby. The little princess relaxed at once. It happened so quickly that the room fell silent. The queen's jaw tightened. She did not enjoy being powerless in her own palace, especially not in front of others. Yet she could not deny what she saw again and again. The child trusted the human. Nothing else brought the same peace. "Bring him in," the queen said. Daniel stepped into the room. As always, he kept a respectful distance. He did not move close, unless the princess reached first. He seemed careful not to cross lines he did not understand. The little girl climbed down from her sleeping platform, walked across the soft floor, and took hold of his hand. Then she finally ate. The chief nurse nearly dropped the breakfast cup in shock. The queen said nothing, but inside, her thoughts darkened. This was now beyond strange. This was becoming a problem the whole palace could see. Before midday, the queen called a private council. Only her most trusted advisors were allowed into the chamber. The door sealed behind them. No servants stayed. No recording systems remained active, even among the highest levels of power. This meeting was meant to stay hidden. The advisors stood in a circle under the blue ceiling light, while the queen remained at the central table. "The child's behavior continues," she said. "Speak freely." An older minister with silver markings on his neck spoke first. "Your Majesty, this is dangerous. The court already whispers. If an outsider becomes the center of royal attention, it will invite talk of weakness." A military advisor nodded, and he is human. That matters. Many in the outer systems still do not fully trust Earth. Another said, "The princess is young. Children attach themselves to strange things. The matter should be corrected early." The queen's eyes moved from one face to the next. Corrected? How? The room became quiet. Finally, the silver-marked minister answered. "Limit contact. Move the soldier to another wing. Let the child adjust." The queen did not like the sound of that. Not because she disagreed with the logic, but because she had already seen what happened when distance was forced. Her daughter cried with a fear that felt deeper than simple sadness. "She is not choosing him out of childish play," the queen said. "There is fear behind this." A younger advisor, one known for speaking too boldly, folded his hands. "Then perhaps the fear comes from him." The room stilled. The queen looked at him sharply. "Explain." "He may be using methods we do not understand. Humans are emotionally direct. It may not be poison or technology. It may be behavioral influence. The idea was ugly, but not impossible. Arker mom. The drone moved first. Its red eye flashed once. Then its body opened with a sharp metallic snap. Thin blades spread from its sides like dark wings. Small targeting lights flickered across its surface, scanning the room. Searching for the fastest path to kill, the musicians ran in panic. One guard shouted for cover. Another tried to raise his weapon, but the angle was wrong, and the princess was too close. The queen felt time slow around her. Her daughter was still in danger, and the closest person standing between the child and Kwa. And death was not a royal guard, not a battle commander, not one of the queen's own trained protectors. It was the human soldier. Daniel Mercer did not wait for orders. With one arm, he pulled the little princess behind a thick support column at the edge of the music hall. With the other, he lifted the broken metal stand he had taken from the fallen instrument. It was not made for combat. It was too light, too narrow, and slightly bent, but it was all he had. The drone launched itself forward with a hiss of compressed air. Daniel turned just in time. The machine struck the metal stand instead of his throat. Sparks flew across the floor. The force pushed him back one step, then another. The princess cried out from behind the column, but he did not look away from the threat. The drone pulled back. Blades spinning now. The guards finally had a clear shot, but the drone moved too fast. It darted low, then high, changing direction in sudden bursts. A pulse round from one palace guard hit the wall and shattered a stone panel. Another blast missed and burned across the floor. "Hold fire," Daniel shouted. The guards froze. He was right. One wrong shot could hit the child. The queen stood only a short distance away, but even she knew she could not rush in now. The drone was built for close assassination. One mistake would cost lives. The machine lunged again. Daniel twisted sideways and brought the metal stand down hard. The impact knocked one of the drone's blades off course, but not enough to stop. His second blade cut across his shoulder armor. Cloth ripped. Blood appeared at once. Still, he stayed on his feet. The queen felt a chill in her chest. This was not the controlled bravery of parade guards or court officers. This was the hard, ugly courage of someone who had truly faced death before and knew there was no time for fear. The little princess peered around the column, tears in her eyes. "Stay down," Daniel said, without turning. His voice was calm, too, as if he had entered a place inside himself where panic could not reach. The drone circled once, its red eye blinking in quick patterns. Then the machine shifted direction. The queen saw its new target. Before anyone else, it was no longer aiming at the child. It was aiming at her. The assassin had two goals. If it could not kill the princess, it would strike the queen. Majesty. "Move!" someone shouted. But the warning came too late. The drone shot forward. Blades spinning, low and fast. The queen stepped back, but her ceremonial dress slowed her movement. One of her guards rushed in front of her, raising an energy shield. The drone hit the shield so hard that the guard was thrown aside. The shield cracked, failed, and died in a burst of blue light. The drone kept coming. Then Daniel moved. He left cover. He left the safer position beside the child and ran straight across open floor toward the queen. The entire hall seemed to stop. Breathing, he reached the fallen instrument stand and threw it like a spear. It spun through the air and struck the drone's side. The hit was not perfect, but it changed the machine's path just enough. Instead of driving into the queen's chest, the drone crashed into the stone steps below her and skidded across the floor in a shower of sparks. "Get the queen out!" Daniel shouted. Two guards rushed to obey. They pulled the queen back to ward. the upper platform, but she resisted for one instant. Just long enough to look toward her daughter. The little princess was no longer behind the column. She had stepped out. Stop! The queen cried, but the child was already running through the smoke-filled hall toward Daniel. The drone, though damaged, was not dead. Its sensor eye flickered wildly. One remaining blade extended. The machine dragged itself over the floor, turning toward movement, toward the child. Daniel saw it. He ran faster than the guards. He reached the princess first, scooped her into his arms, and turned just as the drone fired a short-range explosive, charged from its broken front casing. The blast hit the floor behind him. The shockwave threw him forward. He twisted in the air so his own body would take the impact, not the child. They struck the marble hard. The princess landed against his chest, protected by his arms. Daniel's back hit the floor with crushing force. For a moment, he did not move. The queen broke free from the guards and rushed down the steps. The hall was full of smoke, sparks, and shouted orders. At last, the palace security team stormed in from the outer corridor. Their heavy pulse fire tore through the disabled drone and reduced it to burning metal scraps. But the queen barely saw that. She saw only her daughter, kneeling beside the human soldier. The little princess was crying, but she was unharmed. Daniel lay on the floor beneath falling dust and dim red alarm lights. Blood spread across one side of his uniform. His breathing was shallow. His right hand still rested protectively over the child. Even though the fight was over, the queen dropped to her knees beside them. For one brief second, the room around her vanished. No court, no empire, no politics. Only a mother, her child, and the man who had chosen to stand between them and death. The little princess clung to him and would not let go. The queen looked at the injured soldier, and the truth finally struck her with full force. Her daughter had not chosen him by chance. She had chosen the one person in the palace who was willing to die for her without hesitation. And somewhere deep inside her, the queen understood something else. This attack had not been random. Someone inside the palace had opened the door to murder, and before the blood on the marble had even dried, the queen silently made a promise. She would find out who dot the palace. Medical wing was silent except for the soft hum of healing machines. Bright white lights shone over smooth silver walls. Clean air moved through hidden vents. Monitors blinked in slow patterns beside the medical bed where Daniel Mercer lay unconscious. A healing patch covered the wound on his shoulder, and a second field generator glowed over the burns along his back. Outside the chamber, armed guards stood at every entrance. Inside, no one spoke above a whisper. The queen had ordered the entire wing sealed. No servants were allowed in unless cleared twice. Every healer had been checked. Every device had been scanned. After the assassin drone in the music hall, she trusted no routine, no title, and no smiling face. The little princess sat in a chair beside Daniel's bed. She had refused to leave. The healers tried to guide her away. The nurses brought food, blankets, toys, and warm lights. Nothing worked. The child stayed where she was, one tiny hand resting on the edge of Daniel's blanket, as if that was the only thing keeping her calm. The queen stood a few steps behind her and watched in silence. This would once have insulted her pride. Her own daughter sat beside a stranger's bed with more peace than she had shown in her mother's arms. But something had changed in the queen after the attack. Pride no longer mattered. Truth did. And the truth was now impossible to deny Danielle. Mercer had saved them. Both not for reward, not for status, not because anyone was watching. He had done it because danger stood in front of him. And he had chosen to protect the weak first. The queen had spent her life judging people by rank, by record by family line, by what they could offer the empire. But lying in that medical chamber was a man with none of those things. And still he had shown more honor than many nobles ever would. The little princess leaned closer to the bed and whispered, "Wake up." Her voice was soft and shaky. The queen felt something tighten in her chest. A healer stepped toward her and bowed. "Your Majesty, the human is stable. His injuries are serious, but he is strong." The blast bruised his spine and damaged the outer muscle layer across his back. However, the burns were reduced because he turned his body before full impact. The queen looked at Daniel's still face. He turned to protect her. "Your Majesty." Of course he had. The queen dismissed the healer with a slight nod and moved closer to the bed. For a moment, she stood beside the child, looking down at the injured soldier. His face was pale now, without the tension of battle. He looked younger, almost ordinary. It was difficult to connect this quiet figure to the man who had crossed a room of death, without hesitation. But the queen remembered every second. The run, the throw, the way he had turned his body in the air to shield her daughter from the blast. That memory would not leave her. Behind her, the chamber door opened, and the chief intelligence officer entered. He bowed low and waited. The queen stepped away from the bed and joined him near the far wall. "Report." His expression was grim. "We found signs of internal access tampering in the music hall ceiling." The drone did not enter from outside. Someone brought it in through service shafts and armed it from inside the palace. The queen's face hardened. "A traitor." "Yes, Your Majesty." "Have you identified who?" "Not yet." But the access codes used were old royal maintenance channels. Very few people still know them. The queen looked back at her sleeping daughter. Then the attack was not only against the throne, it was planned by someone who understood the palace. The officer nodded. "That is our belief." The queen's eyes darkened. "Double the internal watch." 3 days after the attack, the royal court gathered again. The great hall had been repaired. But it did not feel the same. The broken stone in the music hall had been replaced. The damaged walls had been polished. Burn marks were gone. New guards stood at every door in full ceremonial armor. Music played again, soft and formal, as if the palace wanted to prove that order had returned, but everyone in the hall knew the truth. Something had changed. Not only because an assassin, drone, had entered the royal palace, not only because a traitor was still hidden somewhere inside the empire's heart. Something deeper had shifted. The queen had changed. The nobles felt it in the way she entered the hall that day. She walked with calm strength. There was a new coldness in her eyes. Not fear, not grief, clarity, the kind that came only after betrayal. Beside her walked the little princess, holding her mother's hand. The child looked peaceful now. No tears, no panic, no trembling. And behind them, dressed in a formal black military uniform given by the palace itself, walked Daniel Mercer. His shoulder was still healing. His movements were careful, and the healers had warned him not to stand too long. But he had accepted the queen's order to appear before the court. The whispers started the moment he entered. Some nobles looked impressed. Others looked offended. A few seemed openly angry that a human soldier had been brought into the center of royal ceremony. Daniel ignored them all. He kept his eyes forward, and his steps measured. The little princess noticed him at once and smiled. Then, in front of the whole court, she let go of the queen's hand, turned, and reached back toward him. A soft sound moved through the hall. Daniel paused, uncertain. The queen gave the smallest nod. Only then did he gently take the child's hand. No. One spoke against it. Not now. They had all heard the reports. They had all seen the footage from the music hall security feed before it was sealed. They knew who had stood his ground when death came through the ceiling, when the royal family reached the center platform. The queen turned to face the court. "Let all present witness," she said. Her voice carried through the hall without effort. The music stopped. Every noble bowed. Every guard lowered their weapon in salute. The queen looked over the gathered faces: ministers, generals, house leaders, diplomats, commanders, and advisors from 100 worlds. So many titles, so much status, so much pride. Then she spoke, with a calm that struck harder than anger. 3 days ago, an assassin entered this palace. No one moved. The target was my blood, my daughter, and, by extension, the throne itself. A dark silence followed. The attack did not come from beyond our walls. It came from within them. Several nobles shifted uncomfortably. The queen? Let that truth settle over them all like a weight. Many among you speak often of loyalty, honor, and duty. Many wear their titles as proof of worth. Yet when danger came, those words were tested. Her gaze moved across the hall. Some froze, some hesitated, some looked to others for command. Then she turned slightly toward Daniel Mercer, but one man did not. The entire room seemed to tighten. He held no rank in this court. He claimed no power in this empire. He asked for no reward. Yet when my daughter was threatened, he placed himself between her and death. When I was attacked, he ran toward danger, not away from it. And when the blast came, he chose to bear it with his own body. The hall remained silent. No one could deny a single word. The queen looked down at her little daughter, who still stood, close to Daniel's side. Before any of us understood the threat, my child saw something we did not. She chose the one person in this palace whose heart she knew was safe. That line reached deeper than politics. Several heads lowered. Even the proudest nobles could not escape the truth in it. The queen raised her hand, and a palace officer stepped forward carrying a silver case. Inside, resting on dark velvet, was the star-shaped insignia of royal protection and honor rarely granted and almost never to an outsider. A visible wave of surprise moved through the court. The queen took the insignia herself. "Daniel Mercer." "Of Earth," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Step forward." He did. He looked uncomfortable with the attention, but he obeyed. The queen stood before him, only a few feet away. In the days before the attack, she would never have imagined this moment. A queen of an old and powerful empire standing before. A simple human soldier with open respect. Yet now it felt right. By the authority of the crown. She said, "I name you royal protector of the princess." A sharp intake of breath came from several nobles. The queen continued before anyone could object. "This title is not given for bloodline. It is not given for wealth or birth. It is given for courage, loyalty, and proven honor." Then she fixed the silver insignia to his formal uniform. The little princess smiled brightly. Daniel bowed his head. "Your Majesty, I do not know what to say." "Then say nothing," the queen replied. "Your actions have already spoken." For the first time, a faint expression touched his face, not pride, but humble disbelief. The queen turned back to the court, and her voice became colder. "Let this also be understood. The traitor who opened our walls to murder has not yet been found. I will tear truth from every hidden corner of this palace if I must. Okay? No rank, no family, and no old alliance will protect the guilty." That warning fell like a blade across the room. Fear showed in more than one face. But then the queen looked at her daughter again, and some warmth returned to her expression. The little princess had already placed both hands around Daniel's arm, as if making sure he would not disappear. He looked down at her with the same steady gentleness he had shown from the beginning. And in that simple image, the whole hall saw what titles had failed to teach them. Real strength was not always loud. Real loyalty did not always wear a crown. Sometimes, in a palace filled with power, the truest heart belonged to the one person no one had expected. From that day forward, the story spread beyond the royal world, across military stations, trade routes, and distant star systems. People spoke of the moment a queen had been forced to see truth through the eyes of her child, the day her little princess chose the human soldier over everyone else.